Hello, everybody. This is Hua. Welcome you back to my YouTube storytelling channel. Today, I am here to read to you a fictional story which I wrote in the honor of Ying Ya and Pao, and this is dedicated to both of you. And this title is called My Once Mousy Bride, and I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy.
He doesn't need fires. He's got his colors noticed on it. Turning heads to see the colors. It goes on and on and on and on. Stranger says he'll regret his armor. They don't get what it's like to be no one, no one, no one.
Mother, I haven't been able to find a single dress worthy of this afternoon tea gathering. Am I to show up wearing last year's fashion? Ying Ya complained as she shuffled through the many layers of rich dresses lying on the bed. Her hair that had been put into a neat bun was now falling apart, and she was missing an earring. When she looked up, only did she realize that her mother wasn't even in the room with her. She'd been talking to herself this entire time. Letting out an angry breath, she stomped out to the foyer, where her mother was busy drinking a cup of fresh tea and glancing over various flowers the maid had presented to her. "Mother!" she cried. Her mother finally looked up, and her face paled at the sight of her. "Good Lord, Ying Ya! What in the good Lord's name have you done to yourself?" She stood up and raced to her, immediately trying to fix her bun. Ying Ya pushed her mother's hands away and was nearly in tears as she moved past her. "You are not listening to me, Mother. I should be the one person at the social event looking like I don't belong. The women in society are brutal with their words." She fell to the chair and wiped her eyes, smearing her black liner across her cheek. She continued sobbing and then suddenly heard her mother's laughter. Looking up, her mother stopped and rushed over, pulling out her small handkerchief and dabbed at her cheeks. "Darling girl, your outfit doesn't make you stand out. Your own true beauty is what will grab attention. Honestly, I don't know why you're so worried when everyone else has been second to you." Ying Ya shook her head, her heart feeling faint at the thought of him. The man her mother didn't even know about. She looked up and found the courage to say it. "Mother, I have given my heart to someone." Shocked, her mother asked, "Who?" Smiling, she reached for her mother's hand. "He's Duke Thor of Remmington Manor." "Duke Thor? Isn't he a bit infamous with the ladies? He's got a rather dashing face, but he uses it to gain popularity in the worst ways, darling." Ying Ya shifted, and her eyes filled with a dreamlike state stare. "Oh, Mother, he's the most absolute perfect creature in the entire world. When he smiles at me, it is as if the heavens above have aligned ever so well. Oh, Mother, do you think he'll be there at the social event? And if he is, you need to help me find a better dress. It is important that he sees only me." Her mother let out a deep breath and touched her cheek. "The mind of a man is quite difficult to read, darling. He may look at you and smile, but inside his heart, he holds another truer than life itself. Duke Thor is handsome, well off in status and money, but isn't he a little too much for you? You are so gentle and caring, while he is loud and sometimes can be a buffoon. Are you sure you want that as a husband?" Ying Ya let out a breath and flopped back into the chair, feeling warm and lightheaded. "Mother, just speaking of his name has my heart fluttering in spades. He is the only man in this world who I can imagine myself standing next to as a husband." And then she sat up and leaned toward her mother. "Please help me find the best dress. I have to stand out." The social event of the year was dreadfully warm for the season. Butterflies were roaming around, their wings gently flapping through the air as the roses gave off a soothing scent. Ying Ya made her way through the maze garden full of finely dressed women of all status and society background. They were dressed richly and wore only the finest jewelry that sparkled against the sun's light. Her mother had caved and brought out the dress she'd hoped to wear. Her mother's own coming-out dress she wore so many centuries ago. It was a beautiful shade of burnt orange with ruffled sleeves and a lace material that covered over a thin silk Egyptian threaded fabric. For years she'd been eyeing that dress, wondering if she'd ever get to wear it. And here she was, showing up at the event of the year sporting a vintage dress that was now drawing eyes. It was scary to think her mother had once been her size. "Lady Ying Ya, is that you?" She turned to the sound of the voice calling her and found her rival enemy, Lady Ella Song, appearing before her, wearing a deep plum dress with layers of ruffles and lace. But what made Ying Ya lose her breath was the wreath of freshwater pearls around her neck. "Lady Ella, how nice to see you. May I say that is an incredible wreath of pearls you have on," Ying Ya said. She smiled and touched it. "This old thing? It was my mother's back in her day and age. I didn't really want to wear it, but Mother insisted that it was the one thing I must wear out today. And look at you. You look so orange. What style is this from? I must know the designer. I shall need one just like it." Ying Ya's cheeks flushed, and she forced a weak smile. "It is not of anyone you know, Lady Ella." She cleared her throat and changed the subject. "What a fine afternoon for this, do you agree?" Ella smiled and looked about her. "Oh, yes, such handsome weather we're having at the moment, I do agree." And then she bowed to her and left without another word. Suddenly, Ying Ya felt like a big old ball of sun standing in the garden, being roasted. Why did she think this dress was pretty? Perhaps because it didn't come from this century? She lowered her gaze and pushed forward her eyes, ignoring the looks from the many women. Once inside the main ballroom, many of the women who wore beautiful dresses were already mingling with other high-status ladies, each one speaking of a gentle tongue and dialect that made them look and appear to be poised. Ying Ya looked around, and emerging from the corner of the library was Duke Thor, wearing a smoky gray, finely polished suit. His hair was let down, and it reached his jawline, creating such an invitation for someone to push it back. His gaze searched the room, and then it landed on her. She smiled, and he returned it. And then he started walking toward her, and when he reached her, took her hand in his and kissed her knuckles gently. "Why, Lady Ying Ya, may I say, you are a fine sight to see," he whispered. "Duke Thor, I am touched." He then took her hand and guided her to the dance floor where couples were already dancing around. He held her hand in his and began a waltz. He was an expert, holding her in his strong frame and moving about like he was walking on air. He looked down at her and smiled. "You are the sweetest thing I've ever seen," he whispered. "Please, tell me you have no suitors. I should be the first, and if the world allows me to, the last one for you." Blushing, Ying Ya replied, "You have such a wicked tongue, dearest Duke. If you truly wish to have me, you know the protocol of how to begin. My home has been bare of suitors as of late, and I find myself wondering why your presence has not graced my doorway." He lowered his lips to her ear. "My shadow has followed you everywhere, my lady, but the fear of being found keeps me at arm's length. Being this close to you has my heart on fire." She sucked in a deep breath and almost lost her footing. "You flatter me." He then reached for her chin and tilted it so that she would look at him. "Never have I ever seen anything so delicate and beautiful in my whole life. Tell me, my lady, where have you been?" Ying Ya felt her lips quiver as she lost her balance, falling forward where he caught her in his arms. She looked up, her breath coming out uneven. "I apologize, Duke. My heart is racing. I seem to have forgotten myself." "I have that effect on women." That line made her heart still for a moment. What did it mean? She pulled back suddenly and regained control of herself. The song ended and he parted from her immediately, smiling at her still, and then he let her hand go and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Ying Ya was left both feeling confused and embarrassed. For the life of her, Ying Ya couldn't figure out what the Duke meant by his words. Did it mean he was coming for her? To ask her hand in marriage? She had seen 24 winters and was considered old enough to bear children and become a wife. The world wasn't going to wait around for her forever. She had to start soon or else her womb would go dry. But the encounter with the Duke left her feeling so unsatisfied and lost. As an only child, she had no one to talk to when she was bombarded with these things. She wanted to ask her mother, but she knew her mother would probe instead of answering her questions. She had little friends, at least those she could trust not to speak about what she asked outside of their circle. In the end, she gave herself a headache, running through the many different scenarios that made absolutely no sense. "My lord, what purpose are you visiting the king for?" his servant Edward asked as he handed the coat to him. Lord Pao of Ying Manor took the coat and slipped it on, brushing his hair back and looking at the mirror one more time before setting the hat on his head. "A marriage decree, Edward." His face lit up. "A marriage decree? My lord, a marriage decree requires a woman. Do you have one in mind?" Smiling, Pao turned to him and smiled. "I do." Edward smiled and his face brightened up. "Oh my goodness, young lad. Will the presence of a lady brighten our dark cause after so long?" "I believe so. Wish me luck that the king should grant me so." A marriage decree was one Pao never expected to draw up, especially if he was going to be the only one who came to the altar fully aware of what the other party looked like. But the world had different plans for him. After so many years of being alone, the world handed him a woman who made his heart almost sink to the ground. He'd stumbled in his steps and nearly spilled his drink at the latest society outing. He rarely attended, but to shut the voice of Edward, he went. And he was glad he did, because standing in the middle of the green maize garden, he saw his wife, his better half, his beautiful soulmate that belonged on his arm. She was wearing the most distinguished dress he'd ever seen and carried herself to be of such great morale. When he tried to steal a dance, he found Duke Thor had already beaten him to it. The way she looked up at him told Pao that she was in love with that man. She was ready to birth his children, and that left his heart feeling like someone punched a hole right through it. He'd gasped, actually had gasped for breath, and felt his knees weaken at the sight of seeing them together. No, he thought, I can't lose her to him. So he woke up with the idea of a marriage decree. The king had been best friends with his father, and he looked at the man like one too, and knew he would do pretty much anything he asked. Arriving at the palace, he was brought to the grand parlor where King Andrew and Queen Anna were sitting enjoying a game of chess. "Lord Pao of Ying Manor arriving," the guard said. Andrew looked up and smiled, pausing from the game. "Ah, my boy! The moment you came, you always give me good luck." He turned back to his wife and knocked over the last standing knight. Checkmate. Anna's face paled, and she stared up at Pao. "You are always on his side, darling boy." Pao felt terrible as he raced to her and kissed her cheek. "Apologies, my queen, for my heart is always with you, but my mind speaks the king's language." Andrew laughed and clapped his hands together. "That is my strapping boy." And then he stood up and walked to kiss his wife gently on the mouth. "You can request anything of me tonight, darling, and I shall give it without question." Anna rolled her eyes. Do I even dare?" And then she stood up and kissed Pao on the cheek. "Enjoy your talk." She turned and walked out of the room with her maids following her. Pao smiled, watching the gentle exchange of farewell between their silence, and the king took his hand, bringing him to sit at the same table they had been sitting at. "What brings you here? I doubt it is to defeat me at a game of chess." Laughing, Pao said, "Never. You know I have never won against you. I came here to ask for a favor." He paused, and then looked up, an eyebrow raised. "A favor?" And then he straightened and asked, "I have known you forever, my boy. You never ask for a favor unless you need a woman." Smiling, Pao replied, "And you know me better than anyone because you're right. I have met someone. I'd like to marry her. I'd like for you to drop a marriage decree." The king laughed merrily and leaned back in his chair. "A marriage decree? Never did I think I would wake up and hear these words from you. My boy, you know that I will do anything to make you content. My world revolves around your happiness. Who is she?" "Lady Ying Ya of Lee Manor." Andrew smiled and touched his chin. "I know her. She's a beautiful lady and one to treasure. She's a bit mousy, though, and has not had life experience much." "Is a mousy wife not a good one?" The king smiled and leaned forward. "A mousy wife is a brilliant choice, my boy. Your queen was once a mousy little girl who I plucked from the streets. Look at her now. She's my heaven. I should drop the decree for you immediately and have it delivered to her manor by tomorrow morning." The evening sun had begun to make its descent when Ying Ya heard the sound of a carriage outside her home. Glancing out, she noticed the butler walking out to greet whoever had arrived and saw that it was Duke Thor who emerged out. Her heart slammed at her chest, and she nearly choked. She rushed into her room, passing her mother, who watched her with confusion. "Dear, what is the rush?" she asked. "Look outside!" Ying Ya cried. "Oh dear," was what she heard her mother say. Once in her room, she ripped the yellow house gown off and quickly pulled on the purple lavender one. Then she ran her fingers through her hair, just as her mother called for her that a guest had come. She walked out, holding her emotions under control, and found him waiting for her in the foyer. He had a grin on his face, and the moment he saw her, he walked to her and took her hand, kissing her knuckles. "I understand it's late. Ask me to leave if you need to, but I just wanted to see you," he whispered. Her heart melted at his words. "How can I ask you to leave after hearing that? Oh, Duke Thor, you are the most incredible man I have ever met." He smiled and touched her cheek gently. Then he came closer and prepared to kiss her. The fear in her heightened, and she backed away, suddenly feeling out of place. She liked him, she did, but where was his manners? To kiss her so boldly right in front of her parents' foyer? "What is it?" he asked out of breath. She blushed. I have never been..." She let the sentence die when his eyes opened wide. "I apologize. It is late. It is best that you be going." He gathered her hands in his. "My lady, did I offend you? I never want to make you feel anything but the greatest love that is beating from my heart." He took her hand and placed it against his chest. "Do you feel that? It's how giant my love for you is." And then he leaned forward. "One kiss, my lady. Just give me one kiss." "Excuse me." The two turned to find Ying Ya's mother entering the foyer, hands on her hips, her eyes gazing directly at them. Ying Ya dropped her hands and stepped away, her cheeks flushed with a deep shame as her mother walked toward them. "Duke Thor, you are of gentle upbringing and manners. How is it that you dare to ask my daughter for such sinful acts inside my own home with me and her father present?" Duke Thor's face turned bright red, and he laughed a high sound. I am deeply sorry, my lady. My actions are dishonorable." "Indeed they are. I think it is time you leave." "Yes, of course, my lady." He turned to Ying Ya and smiled before he left her quietly. Once he was out of the manor, she turned toward her mother with disbelief. "How could you, mother?" she asked. Her mother pointed a finger at her. "How could I? How could you? Do you understand what that young man was asking of you? He was wanting to do something sinfully pleasurable with you while in your own home with your own parents present. Where is his honor? Where does he protect you in that? He did not even care to think of what others would say about you." "It is not as if he would talk about this in public, mother." "Duke Thor is famous with the ladies, my darling girl. Every single one who has met up with him has been left crying until she can't get up. And then she becomes a spinster and chooses the nunnery." Ying Ya laughed. That is a terrible, terrible gossip spread by women who are jealous. Ask Mary. Ask Heather. Ask Fiona. Ask them. I will not. Then you shall need to remember that a man who values your dignity will never ask you to do something that would destroy you in public. He waited until the very late hour to come calling on you because he hoped we were to bed. His idea was to do something dirty with you, darling girl. Don't get caught up with his handsome face. If he was honorable, he would have asked where your chaperone was. Ying Ya felt the sting of her mother's words against her, and she bit back tears. What if he truly loves me? I want him. I have fallen in love with him. Well, then fall out of love with him this very moment. Nonsense. The heart is mine to do with what I please, and I choose Duke Thor. Ying Ya left her mother standing in the foyer and rushed to her bedroom. She didn't realize she'd been crying until the teardrops hit her hand, and then she covered her face and sobbed. What was so wrong about a man wanting her? She admitted what he was asking her to do. It was against her own morals, and quite frankly, she'd never have done it. But to think that her own mother didn't believe he was a good man solely based on rumors. This was the man she wanted. He was handsome, he was kind, and he adored her. That was love, wasn't it? The pounding of the door woke Ying Ya up at the crack of dawn the following morning. She went to bed upset and woke up still feeling the pain of last night's situation. She sat up in bed and her eyes felt raw and swollen. What was all this ruckus? Angie! She called out to her maid. Angie! The woman rushed to her room and then gasped. Oh, my darling girl, what happened to your eyes? Ying Ya frowned and then turned to look in the mirror and nearly fell out of bed. She looked as if she'd been punched in the eyes. The lids were so swollen that it made it look as if she had another layer of lids. Oh, dear God, she cried. Hurry, get me a wet cold towel. Angie ran out of the room and returned a moment later with a basin and towel. She quickly soaked it and drained all water before walking over to place it over Ying Ya's eyes. My darling girl, you better be looking your best. Why? The king's envoy is here. Ying Ya ripped the towel off her face. What? Angie nodded and replaced the towel back on. I am not entirely sure what they are doing here. We heard them at the crack of dawn coming down the road and alerted the missus and master. The two of them are getting ready to go downstairs now to meet them. What business do they have here? She asked, and then suddenly she pulled the towel off and turned to face Angie. It's the Duke. He's here to ask for my hand in marriage. Angie frowned. Why would the Duke ask for the king's envoy? He is not affiliated with the king's men. Frowning, Ying Ya nodded. That's right. Then came the knock, and the butler's voice said, My lady, your presence is requested. It was the best she could do. The cold water compression helped a bit, but her eyes were still heavily swollen. When she arrived downstairs, her parents took one look at her, and both dropped their jaws open. But it was too late now to back out. She came and dropped to her knees beside her parents as the king's envoy messenger came forward. He was neatly dressed, all in gold, and held a scroll in deep yellow. He unfolded it and began reading. By the king's decree, I have selected Ying Ya, daughter of Li Manor, for she is brilliantly charming and holds the status of a fine woman. By my decree, which is honorable and true, I decree today a marriage announcement between Ying Ya, she held her breath, son of Yang Manor, Lord Pao. She shot her head up. My decree holds solid foundations, and if disregarded or disobeyed, it is to be punishable by death. She froze, and her heart hammered against her chest. Wait, what? Who? Her parents bowed, and she was so shocked that Angie had to poke her side for her to bow down. You may rise, the envoy messenger said. He handed the scroll to her, and she took it with shaking hands. You are to arrive at the king's palace tonight before the sun sets for a debriefing with your groom. An envoy will be sent here for you later this evening. He turned and left as swiftly as he came, and she turned around to her parents. Who is Lord Pao of Ying Manor? She asked. He is a good man, her father said as he turned toward her. The king has chosen a wise man for you. She made a face. I have no idea who he is, and I shall refuse. Then be ready to die, her father said in a serious tone. Did you not hear the envoy? To disagree or disobey is a crime punishable by death. Her mother reached for her hand. Darling girl, come with me. She took the scroll from her hand and gave it to her father as she took her arm, guiding her back to her bedroom. Once there, she took the comb from her dresser and began to brush her hair. It was then that Ying Ya realized that her mother was grooming her for tonight's appearance. She stood up so suddenly that the top of her head knocked her mother's chin. You are not sending me to get married to this stranger, she cried. I do not love him. I love the Duke. Her mother stood and shook her head. Take the Duke out of your heart, darling girl. He shall have no place as husband or friend in your life. Ying Ya felt her heart break, and she shook her head, despair breaking her apart. No, mother. You cannot allow this to happen. If the king forces his marriage on me, I shall die. I do not even know him. How will I learn to be a wife to someone who I have never met? I know him, her mother whispered. He's a kind and gentle soul who speaks wisdom beyond his years. Ying Ya made a face. Then why don't you marry him? Her mother dropped her hands. Ying Ya! The king has decreed a marriage on you, and you shall oblige. If you refuse, you will be hung in public. Do you honestly want that? She felt tears enter her eyes, and she shook her head. But I don't love him. I love Duke Thor. He is the man I want to spend the rest of my life with. Why can't you understand that? The Duke who was seen this morning parading with Ella. Ying Ya wiped her eyes. Why would he not be parading with her? I'm bound to be married to a man I don't even know. She threw herself on the bed and sobbed. Stop crying. Your eyes already look like a terrible raccoon. You are about to meet the king later tonight. Get her ready, Angie. The study where Pao stood was lined with books the king had read over and over again. There were several with dog-eared pages, and he had to smile because they were words or teachings he'd remembered the king reading to him as a child. He was nervous now as he stood waiting for his bride to arrive. He hadn't known what to expect. Was she shocked? The envoy messenger didn't have much to tell him, so he hadn't prepared. But the king and queen had retired to the chamber so as not to disturb his first meeting with her. He was now sorting all the thoughts in his mind as he waited for her to arrive. When the carriage came outside, he made his way to the front entrance of the palace and watched as the driver came to a halt. He walked out and signaled that he would open the door for her. Pao pulled open the small door, and a white-gloved hand extended out. He took it, and it was warm, small enough to fit into the palm of his hand, as he tightened his grip gently to steady her. And then another pair of gloves pushed the curtain away and revealed her, although her eyes were swollen and her cheeks were pale. His heart instantly hurt, as she locked gazes with him. She stared at him, unable to speak a single word, and then she suddenly toppled forward at him as if someone had pushed her. He caught her in his arms, and he noticed another person in the carriage. Once he settled her on the ground and closed the door, the envoy left, and she looked up at him with questioning eyes. Are you all right? He asked. She looked away and nodded. He smiled and took her hand, but she withdrew it, and his smile faded. He cleared his throat and gestured for her to walk ahead. It took a moment before she finally did move, and he followed her as the butler took them to the study. He poured them each a cup of tea and then left. In this light, Pao studied her, and saw that her eyes were swollen, as if she'd been crying all day. Her lips were also slightly raw, and the dress she wore, she'd missed a button on the top. When she turned toward him, he moved forward, and she backed away. Do not be afraid. You forgot a button. She reached up and quickly fixed it, and then she began chewing her lip, and he realized that was the reason for it being so raw. Ever so gently, he stepped forward and took her hand. May I? He asked. She nodded, and then he reached up and pulled her lower lip away from her teeth. He saw that she'd drawn blood on her skin, and he let out a sigh as he reached into his pocket and drew out his handkerchief. He dabbed it gently on her lips. Don't hurt yourself. I can't bear to see you in pain, he whispered. Pain, she finally spoke. Then why would you ask the king for a marriage decree? He smiled, glad she wasn't afraid to speak her mind. I saw you. I knew that you were mine. You saw me? She asked, frowning. He stepped away from her, giving her distance. Yes, I saw you. A few days ago at the social gathering. You were wearing a vintage, beautiful flame-colored dress that spoke of a beauty I hadn't seen in decades. Immediately your stance spoke to me, and I just knew. I just knew you were the only woman who could honor my name and walk beside me. Her cheeks slightly flushed. Why do you speak as if you're from another time? Smiling, he replied, I speak only what I know. And then he handed the cup of tea to her. Try some. It's sent from China. It's one of the best. She took it and took a small sip. Her facial expression changed and she smiled. It's a poem. What is it? They call it oolong tea. It is the only brand the king drinks. It was a gift I gave him many moons ago after my visit to China. She looked up. I have never been. It's gorgeous there. One day I shall take you. And then he paused and reached for the other cup. He brought it up and smiled at her. My lady, I wish to share my life with you. All my dreams, my deepest desires, I wish to give it all to you. No matter how difficult life may be, I truly believe that when you have a good partner, your world becomes easier. Will you promise to give me the same consideration in return? I hardly know you, she said. We have our entire lifetime to know each other. She walked forward. So is this it? Are you not going to kiss me and then ask me to give myself to you? Pao put his cup down and then took hers, setting it beside his. He put his hands in his pockets. My lady, I respect you as my wife. I will never do anything to stain your honor. I have decreed a marriage because I truly believe you are my soulmate. I will make you see how worthy I am as a husband. But what you can expect is my utmost respect to you. And I won't touch you until you ask me to. She blinked, a bit taken back. What if I never allow you to? Will you be able to deliver that promise? She smiled. I will. The question is, what will you do when you break that promise and ask me to touch you? Thank you for tuning in. Chapter 2 will be out shortly.
He doesn't need fires. He's got his colors noticed on and on and on, turning heads to see the colors. It goes on and on and on and on. Stranger says he'll regret his armor. They don't get what it's like to be no one, no one, no one, no one. We don't wanna be hiding. We don't wanna be fighting. We don't wanna be running from the sun. We don't wanna keep trying. We consider denying. We don't wanna be running from the sun. Of ebony publicity, she carries on and on and on and on. Small town words are filled with bias, and they'll go on and on and on and on. A stranger says, poor girl with that armor. They don't get that it's her choice to have a veiling golden, golden gold. We don't wanna be hiding. We don't wanna be fighting. We don't wanna be running from the sun. We don't wanna keep trying. We can stand the denying. We don't wanna be but they don't get. We can choose, 'cause we're like one, like one, like one, like one.